My partner's friends convinced her I am a loser and leave me for someone better, and now she regrets it after they abandoned her. I'm 37, an average guy from a regular background, but I've worked hard for everything I have. I run a small business. It's not the flashiest, but it's stable. I pay the bills, keep us comfortable, and even save a bit. I thought my wife, Em, was content with the life we built together, but things started to change when she landed a big promotion. Suddenly, she was rubbing elbows with a new circle of friends, ones who lived for luxury, high-end fashion, and the next exotic vacation. It wasn't like her at first. Em used to be down to earth, unimpressed by the fancy things in life. We were always happy with our little corner of the world, planning weekend getaways we could afford, putting money away for emergencies, looking at life practically. But something shifted. She'd come home from these hangouts with her new crowd, going on about so-and-so's new BMW, their beach house, and how they had all these fancy investments. I'd listen, nodding, not realizing that these were seeds of dissatisfaction being planted right there. One night, we were at one of her friends' dinner parties. It was a sleek setup, designer everything, hosted by a couple who seemed obsessed with showing off their wealth. I felt like a fish out of water. At the end of the night, Em was quiet on the way home. I asked if something was wrong, and she looked at me, her voice flat. "Don't you ever feel like we should be doing better?" That line hit hard. I thought we were doing fine, even more than fine. We didn't have a McMansion or luxury cars, but we had enough for a good life. It wasn't long before her subtle hints turned into direct comments. She'd compare my job to her friends' husbands' corporate gigs, where they had cushy salaries, company cars, and impressive job titles. She'd ask why I didn't aim higher or take risks to get us into that kind of lifestyle. One day, she asked if I'd consider getting a loan so we could buy a BMW like her friend's husband. I told her I wasn't going into debt just to look like I belonged in her friend's world. She didn't like that answer. Then her family got involved. Her parents had never really approved of me, especially her dad, who'd always made snide comments about my business, calling it a cute little operation. Her mom would constantly talk about how I had potential and that maybe she'd settled too soon. They started suggesting we move to a bigger place, something with better curb appeal, and offered to help us financially to get started. It was all about image for them, as if buying into this lifestyle meant we'd finally made it. But that wasn't me, and I thought Em knew that. Then came the guy who changed everything. Let's call him C. He was one of her new friend's husbands, smooth-talking, always well-dressed, with a high-paying job, and the charisma of someone who's used to people admiring him. He wasn't shy about bragging, his new investments, his vacation homes, the places he and his wife had conquered. At first, I thought Em just found him interesting, like a novelty. But soon, his name kept popping up in conversation. She'd casually mention some advice he'd given on investments, or talk about some fancy dinner they'd had with him. It felt odd, like she was drawn to him in a way that went beyond just friendship. One evening, I noticed a new necklace around her neck, a piece she'd never mentioned buying. When I asked about it, she shrugged it off. "Oh, it was a gift," she said, brushing it aside. My stomach churned, but I didn't want to jump to conclusions. A few days later, I overheard her on the phone, laughing in a way that felt too intimate, her voice soft, a tone she'd once used with me. I couldn't ignore it any longer, so I asked her point blank if she was seeing C. She didn't deny it. She looked me dead in the eye and said, "C understands me. He sees what I could be, not what's holding me back." There was no mistaking her words. I was what was holding her back. The life we had, the life I'd worked for, the life I thought we both wanted, was now beneath her. I suggested counseling, a way to salvage whatever was left between us, but she scoffed. She said the problem wasn't her, it was me. Her friends encouraged her to cut loose and start fresh, telling her she deserved better. According to them, I was the dead weight, the anchor keeping her from the glamorous life she was meant for. Her family was thrilled at the idea of her leaving me. They practically celebrated when she mentioned divorce. Her dad even offered to cover the lawyer fees to ensure she got a fair share. They hired a ruthless lawyer, known for handling messy cases, and immediately went after me for everything they could. Alimony, half my business, the works. It was as if they thought M was entitled to everything I had simply for putting up with the mediocre life we built together. M and her family went to extreme lengths to make sure she came out on top. They twisted every detail to make me look like the bad guy. M would tell anyone who'd listen that I'd trapped her in a life she never wanted, that I'd wasted her best years by holding her back. It was as if she'd forgotten everything we'd shared, every moment we'd built together. I lost friends who believed her story, and soon, I was fighting this battle alone. Then came the financial blow. She drained our joint account, claiming it was for living expenses. Meanwhile, I was stuck, covering the mortgage and the bills she left behind, all while paying for my own lawyer. Her parents filed reports alleging emotional neglect, implying that I'd somehow manipulated her into staying with me out of financial necessity. It was absurd. I'd always been upfront about money, but they turned it around, making me out to be a financial leech, someone who'd exploited her for his own benefit. As the divorce proceedings dragged on, her family continued to pile on, demanding more than was fair. They wanted half of everything I owned, and her lawyer was relentless, insisting that she was entitled to compensation for the years she'd spent with me. They painted a picture of me as an unambitious man who'd kept her chained to a mediocre life, and they demanded a massive settlement. Throughout it all, M's new life with C was broadcast for everyone to see. She'd post pictures of their expensive dinners, the vacations he took her on, the gifts he showered her with. It was painful, but I tried to hold on to the thought that eventually, this nightmare would end, and I could move on with my life. Then, out of the blue, I got a message from an acquaintance who'd managed to stay neutral. They told me that C had dumped M. He hadn't been interested in a commitment, she'd just been a temporary distraction for him. When he'd found someone new, someone younger and richer, he'd cut her off without a second thought. A week after that, M showed up at my door. She looked nothing like the confident woman who'd left me. She was tired, hollow, like someone who'd been drained of every ounce of pride. She started crying, telling me how sorry she was, how she'd been blind, how she'd let other people influence her. She begged me to forgive her, to let her come back, promising that things would be different this time. I looked at her, feeling a strange mix of sadness and relief. She was a shell of the woman I'd once loved, a person who'd been willing to destroy me for a fantasy that had turned out to be hollow. I told her I was sorry, but there was no going back. The trust was gone, the love was gone, and I couldn't rebuild something she'd torn apart so carelessly. She begged, saying she'd make it right, that she'd prove herself, but I had nothing left to give. I closed the door on her, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. It wasn't the ending I'd wanted, but it was the one I needed. Since then, I've focused on rebuilding. My business is back on track. I've reconnected with friends who value me for who I am, and I've found peace in the life I've worked so hard to create. M still reaches out occasionally, hinting that she wants to talk, but I don't respond. I've learned that some people aren't worth the fight, no matter how much history you share.